According to ImageLine, the FL Studio trial is downloaded more than 30,000 times per day, and there are a bunch of other digital audio workstations which are at least as popular as FL Studio. And while more and more people around the world are learning how to produce music, there is definitely a big learning curve that separates beginner and intermediate producers from the pros. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to lay out the exact skills you need to master if you want to become a better music producer. They say that there are 4 stages of learning: unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. Let me go through those one more time with a short definition for each. Unconscious incompetence. At this stage, we are completely unaware of our own lack of knowledge or skills. We probably don't even realize that there is anything we even need to learn or improve. Conscious incompetence. In this stage, we become aware of our own lack of knowledge or skills. We begin to realize that we don't actually know what we're doing. Conscious competence. At this stage, we have learned the new skill or knowledge, but we still need to concentrate and think about what we're doing. We may make mistakes, but we're able to correct them and improve with practice. Unconscious competence. In this final stage, the skill or knowledge has become second nature. We can perform it without even thinking about it, and it's often automatic. Now, the problem with music production is that if you actually break it down, it's not just one skill, it's many skills. And because of this, the conscious incompetence stage can last for a very long time. And without guidance, it can take a long time to even figure out what you actually need to learn. So my goal with this video is to hopefully help speed up that process and make sure you have access to all the information you need to master in order to become a better music producer. One of the most important steps to getting better at music production is picking a digital audio workstation, or DAW, which aligns with your workflow, and then sticking with it. And honestly, if you're brand new to music production, you're probably not going to have a great sense of what your workflow is even going to look like yet, so it probably doesn't matter all that much which DAW you choose. Plus, most DAWs have some sort of free trial which will allow you to play around with them before you make a purchase. Once you've decided on a DAW, really get to know all the stock plugins for creating, mixing, and mastering your music. And this isn't going to happen overnight, so be sure to set realistic expectations of yourself in terms of how much time you can actually dedicate to learning and producing. When I first started messing around with FL Studio, it was around 2004, and there really wasn't a lot of info out there about how to use it except for the user manual, which I had no interest in reading at 14 years old. I kind of just messed around with the software, and it was definitely a lot of fun, but my mixes were trash and they really weren't getting much better. In many ways, I was stuck in the unconscious incompetent stage of things. And at that time, I thought that maybe FL Studio just wasn't as good as some of the other DAWs out there. So I tried Reason, I tried Ableton, I probably tried Logic and a couple others, and all these softwares were different enough that I ended up just wasting time trying to learn them when I should have just stuck with FL Studio and focused on how to actually use it properly. Now, ultimately, I did eventually come back to FL Studio because I was most familiar with it, but I wasted a lot of time in the process. And so this is my advice to you. If you start feeling like there's a different DAW or a new plugin that is somehow going to make your track sound better, it's most likely not true, and in many cases it might actually just be a waste of time and money. There's a lot of different opinions on the internet about why this DAW is better than that one, and it's really easy to get caught up in the hype and think that you might need to switch things up. And while every DAW does have its strengths and weaknesses, they all ultimately do the same thing. And so if you really focus on mastering the software, eventually you'll be making some amazing tracks. And this goes for plugins too. I've seen a lot of beginner producers get sucked into the idea that somehow the next plugin they buy is going to fix all their problems. And I hate to break it to you, but it's just not true. It's much more important to master the plugins you already have. And then once you have a really good understanding of all the tools you do have, then you can potentially buy a couple plugins you might need to fill in the gaps. So try to block out all the extra noise out there and just focus on learning one DAW inside and out. Now, if you're new to music production, you might be saying, this sounds great, but how do I know exactly which tools or plugins to actually focus on and learn how to use? And well, since we have a lot of other topics I want to cover in this video, I don't want to spend too much time on this, so I've created a Google document with a list of all the FL Studio plugins you'll want to really learn how to properly use. However, even if you don't use FL Studio, most of these plugins should have an equivalent stock version in whatever DAW you're using. So check the description of the video if you want to check that out. But let's get back into more important things you need to learn. It's no secret that learning the basics of music theory is going to help you come up with better chord progressions and melodies. But one thing that a lot of beginner producers overlook is sound design. And the good thing about sound design is that it forces you to learn about a lot of different types of effects and processes that you may not otherwise be exposed to. It's kind of the missing link between creating and arranging music and mixing it. And you honestly don't need to become a pro at either one of these. Just having a good fundamental understanding of music theory and sound design will take you a long way. And you really shouldn't have to spend too much time learning the basics of both. There's a ton of free resources out there, including a bunch of YouTube tutorials that I've made on this channel. And you can also check out musictheory.net as another useful free resource that has a bunch of music theory lessons on it. Another important skill to learn is arrangement. This is basically the process of organizing and transforming a collection of musical ideas into a complete track. And one thing that gave me a hard time for many years was understanding the actual structure of how I should put my tracks together. For example, it was always easy for me to come up with melody ideas, chord progressions, and even drum loops. But when it came to actually putting it all together into a full song or a beat, I just always struggled for some reason. I pretty much just had the same loop repeating for like 3 minutes straight. It seems kind of ridiculous now because honestly the solution is extremely simple. You just need to listen to and then copy the structure of any track that you like. And obviously the more tracks you listen to and analyze, the more you'll start to see a few different ways that you could potentially structure your tracks. Another set of skills which is going to set you apart from your average producer or beatmaker is learning some audio engineering. Now, I think of an audio engineer as someone who knows how to record, mix, and master music, all of which are important skills that will definitely make you a better music producer. And I think this is one area that will probably take a lot more time to really master. However, even getting a good fundamental understanding of recording, mixing, and mastering will take you a long way. Now, the other extremely important thing you need to work on is developing your ear. This is one of the most important things you can focus on if you really want to become a better music producer, and especially if you want to get professional sounding mixes and learn how to master your own tracks or beats. And so for the next couple minutes, I'm going to give you some practical ear training exercises that you can work on in your own time to help develop your ear. Now, the first exercise I want to share with you is very simple. Basically, you want to listen to your favorite mixes, ideally on the same equipment that you use to mix with. So try to listen on your studio monitors or your studio monitor headphones. Then hone in on a specific element of the mix. For example, listen to just the kick and pay attention to all the details about it. Focus on how loud it is compared to the other drums and all the other elements in the mix. Where does it sit in the frequency spectrum? Does it have a short decay or a long decay? Is it centered or panned? You can even listen to the rhythmic pattern. Then you can move on to another element of the track. Do this for every single element, and what you'll start to notice is that as your ears get more trained, you'll start to hear background elements or layers that you didn't even realize were there before. And if you can hear it, then you can replicate it in your own mixes. And ultimately, the more you train your ear, the better you're going to be at mixing, but also at producing in general, because you'll be able to recreate really cool techniques that you like in other people's tracks just by using your ears. And actually, this is where sound design kind of works in with this as well, because in order to recreate the techniques that you might hear in a track, you have to learn the technical aspects of sound design, which forces you to train your ears in the process. Now, you can even take this ear training exercise a step further and use a tool like Span, which is a free spectrum analyzer plugin, to visually analyze the track in addition to just listening to it. But having the visual aid will help you get a sense of what a professionally mixed and mastered track should look like. And if you want to take things even further, you can try recreating other people's tracks, which will really solidify this process. The second great ear training exercise that I want to share with you is actually a website called SoundGym.co. This is a membership website that you can sign up for, and they have a free version and a paid version. The free version gives you access to a few different ear training exercises, and the one that I find most useful is called Peak Master. This exercise gives the audio source an EQ boost in a random area on the frequency spectrum, and then you have to try to determine where it's boosted. So this can be a great tool to do some fun daily ear training exercises, and I definitely recommend getting at least the free version. However, in addition to only having access to a few exercises in the free version, you can only do each exercise one time per day. But if you do want to get the paid version, you'll have access to a bunch more daily exercises that you can do unlimited times per day. So if you are interested in that, I'll post a link in the description, which will give you 20% off of your membership. Now, there's one more thing I want to briefly touch on, but first, let's do a quick recap of all the skills we've talked about. First, you want to master your DAW, including learning how to use all of the important stock plugins. You also want to get a decent fundamental understanding of music theory and sound design. You also need to learn how to arrange your tracks tracks properly. And during this whole process, you should be learning some audio engineering. And finally, you need to work on training your ears so that you can mix, master, and create music more effectively. Now, one thing I didn't really talk about in this video is workflow. And when it comes to music production, being aware of and trying to optimize your workflow is extremely important. This is something that I completely neglected for a really long time and wasted I don't even know how many hours in the process. However, over the past several years, I've been working hard to fix some of my bad workflow habits. And I've gotten it to the point where things are very streamlined and I'm saving a lot of time in my sessions. So if you want to know what I did to fix my terrible workflow habits, click the video on the screen now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.